Yes, we'll see if we can find a council somewhere. Here you go.
Thank you.
Good morning, Catherine. Welcome. You've been watching proceedings. We've got about 10 minutes. Members have read the written submission that you've provided us with. Over to you.
Thank you. Hello, my name's Catherine Bates. I was born and raised in Canterbury and lived here most of my life, and although I've lived elsewhere at times, I've now been living in Christchurch for over 10 years. Thank you for opening this bill up for a submission process. I just wish, like the submissions for ECAN, that we'd all been given more time to do so, and that this process hadn't been rushed in just before Christmas when people's focus is elsewhere. However, my submission differs slightly from my written submission today, but it still covers the same topics. The next step in the way the city's revival is managed is an important and crucial one. I am pleased to see that the bill marks a step away from the previous model of government dominance over Christchurch, but it doesn't step far enough. In the short time given, I tried to get my head around the bill and what each part said, and then what each part meant. I apologise if I've misinterpreted clauses or intent, or perhaps offered impossible alternatives, but I'm not an expert. I'm a frustrated and demoralised citizen of Christchurch who would love to be happy with the creation of this new entity, Regenerate Christchurch, if it went further towards a real regeneration. But like the government's undemocratic plans for ECAN, I can't let this pass without making my stand. I oppose the Greater Christchurch Regeneration Bill as it stands because it does not address the needs of recovery or regeneration of Christchurch in terms of true social local input and engagement. In regards to governance, it reads as a continuation of the status quo under Sarah and does not do enough to move the governance and control away from central back to local government or make enough provision for community engagement. In regard to the general points within the bill, first of all, local decision making. The bill states that it recognises the importance of local leadership of Canterbury Regional Council, Christchurch City Council, Selwyn District Council, Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu and Waimakariri District Council by providing them with a role in significant ministerial decision making processes under the bill. I advocate that local leaders be the decision makers from 2016, not the minister. If this bill truly recognised the importance of local leadership, then these bodies and organisations should be making the decisions, being the decision makers, not merely being provided with a role in a ministerial decision making process. By allowing these bodies to have a full and active role in decision making from the outset, the Crown is dishonouring. By not allowing these bodies to have a full and active role in decision making from the outset, the Crown is dishonouring the tenets of democracy and making a farce of local government and the ability of a region to manage its own affairs. If the Crown were truly devoted to Christchurch recovering in a timely manner and able to now regenerate, it needs to take a step back and allow the city and region to do this without being dictated to by one minister with absolute authority and central government overall. The explanatory notes go on to state that the bill also recognises that an atypical and transitional role of central government in the regeneration of Greater Christchurch is expected to continue for the next 5 years, but will progressively move towards Crown and local government establishing roles and responsibilities. I advocate strongly for our local leaders to be the primary leaders in the regeneration of Christchurch from 2016. It is unacceptable that the process of transition from Crown to local government control continues for the next 5 years. It is time that central government allowed the natural progression of regeneration to occur, to be it slower than they wish, but at an achievable and affordable rate under a democratic administration. It has already been 5 years, and we in Greater Christchurch, that's beyond the central city, have seen very little progress in regeneration of even the simplest things like our local dairy, as the Crown's focus has been on progressing the rebuild of central Christchurch. Powers. I advocate that the Minister is not the holder of power over Christchurch and how it progresses. The Mayor, the Chairperson and the Chief Executive of Regenerate Christchurch may be the ones to exercise that power, as it's recorded in the explanatory notes. However, no one person is to hold absolute authority of these powers, and the use of these powers must be in accordance with consensus from the Mayor, the Chairperson and the Chief Executive. Community engagement. I advocate strongly that this bill enables direct community participation and engagement in the planning and the regeneration of Greater Christchurch, especially by including publicly elected members to the board. Additionally, I would like to please include a definition of community participation and engagement in Part 1, Preliminary Provisions, Clause 4, Interpretation. Since the objectives of Regeneration Christchurch state that it is to engage and advocate effectively with communities, stakeholders and decision makers to achieve its purpose, and to collaboratively work with others in achieving regeneration, it would be pertinent to say how that engagement and collaboration is to be interpreted, and therefore how it might be implemented by Regenerate Christchurch. In order for this entity to truly reflect Christchurch and the wishes of its people, it needs to include the people, not just appointees from the Business Roundtable or similar, or developers, but citizens of the city who represent different sectors. I recommend that the membership of the board comprises 7 members as follows. 2 members appointed by the Christchurch City Council, and 2 members appointed by the Minister, and 2 members who will be publicly elected, and 1 member appointed not by the Minister but after consultation with Te Ruranga o Ngāi Tahu. And of course, those elected members may be the same ones that you could have appointed, but at least they're elected by the people. We have had a say in the process. As for a successor organisation, if there needs to be such a thing, Clause 99.4 regarding Section 56 of the Local Government Act 2002, which is that there will be consultation required before council-controlled organisation is established, definitely applies to the establishment of a successor organisation. And why is it a given that there will be a successor organisation anyway? If there is no change to this, how it's put in the bill already, and we have to wait until 2021, then I strongly suggest that under Subpart 5, Establishment of Regenerate Christchurch, Clause 89, Establishment and Status of Regenerate Christchurch, that on and from the close of 30th of June 2021, the purpose and objectives of Regenerate Christchurch are to be continued jointly by the Christchurch City Council and the Canterbury Regional Council. Schedule 5, provisions applying to in relation to Regenerate Christchurch Part 1 General Provisions. Regarding the chairperson of the board, in my written submission, I had specified that the chairperson of the board will be elected from among the other appointed and elected board members as outlined in Clause 95 for the period ending with the close of 30th of June 2021. Yet only last week it was announced that the chairperson had already been appointed. Can I ask a question? And I'd like an answer now. How is the chairperson able to be appointed for an entity that doesn't legally exist yet? Can somebody answer me that?
No, the role of the committee is not to answer questions. We're here to hear. We're here to hear your submission.
But nobody has been able to answer
It's a question that you
that.
may wish to address to others, but we're here to hear your submission.
So what's the point of the submission process if it's already a done deal? In regards to Schedule 4 of Regenerate Christchurch area, I'm glad to see a focus on the east of Christchurch, but I still believe that the delineation of the areas proposed creates a piecemeal regeneration of the city by effectively ignoring the rest of the city needs, even if just for the time being, especially those suburbs in the east between Central City and New Brighton, who are already quite neglected, and will generate more divisiveness from within those suburbs and possibly the city. The entire city needs a comprehensive development plan which allows focus to be intensified where the need is greatest, but at the same time addressing the regeneration needs of the whole city. So my suggestions are to change the area's focus to Part 1, suburban regeneration, focus on economic and social hub developments in all suburbs where people live, and local shopping hubs and amenities which were badly affected by the earthquakes and have not or only partially recovered. 2, the Christchurch residential red zones, the areas along the river. Please do not ignore how strongly people feel that many parts of this should never be rebuilt on, and please consider the wishes of thousands of people who signed a petition for this land to become the Avon River Park. Part 2, New Brighton as it's proposed, and Part 3, Christchurch Central City as it's proposed currently under Part 1.1 of Schedule 4. And finally, I'm very concerned that there's no mention of the natural environment anywhere within this bill. In my written submission, I asked for the very least mention, that provision be made to include protection of the natural environment in the purpose and objectives of Regenerate Christchurch. I'm doing the submission as an individual, and my biggest concern is the lack of community involvement in this organisation and planning for Christchurch. but I also belong to the Avanor Takara Network. It's a group that has been advocating for years now that the red zone lands along the river be turned into an ecological and recreational reserve for the community to protect and enhance water quality, biodiversity and recreation and cultural use since the red zone announcements. We would appreciate it if our work and the wishes of the thousands who signed that petition in 2012 presented to a previous incarnation of this committee asking for such a park be recognised as a serious and achievable objective of Regenerate Christchurch. If this body still has a pressing need for anchor projects, then this should be at the top of that list. Thank you for your time. I hope you take what we're all saying on board.
Catherine, thank you very much. We've well used the 10 minutes, but I can see a couple of members have questions. So Paul Foster-Bell and then Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. You focused quite heavily on perhaps the Crown having too much say, but as a non-Cantabrian, and I've got many colleagues here who are Cantabrians, do you think we are also stakeholders given 16.5 billion of taxpayers' money from throughout the country is coming into the province, and in particular those cornerstone projects, those major projects that the Crown is investing in, we as taxpayers from elsewhere should have our, I suppose, right to be represented and to have no taxation without representation?
To some degree. I acknowledge the contribution the Crown has made has been amazing. However, I do think that the local input in those anchor projects, was completely ignored. I think that once the anchor projects were put on the table as the blueprint, we've had no say in what they are and whether we want them. And I don't think that's good enough, and I think that Regenerate Christchurch needs to address that.
Clayton.
Look, it worries me, and thanks for your submission, but it worries me that you, if I'm not mischaracterising your submission, that you seem, with your reference to the appointment of the chairman, who I personally think is a good choice, but I share your view on. I personally
probably do too, but that's not the point.
But, yeah, indeed. So, is it your contention? Do you believe this process is a farce, essentially, or a process?
Well, if I can make a submission,
or a process of just, if you like, going through the constitutional motions to get people to submit, given that there's been a preemptive appointment prior to the legislation coming into place?
Yep, I do. I have seen, and I'm sorry to be cynical, but this whole ChCh process has been a tick box engagement when it comes to community, and I think that it is a farce if the chair has already been elected, yet I was able to submit on that part. If I've put a particular point in my submission regarding that, then then my whole submission is a farce, and everybody else's as if everything's already been decided.
Thank you.
Catherine, thank you very much for your time, for your submission. We appreciate you coming and presenting to us today. Thank you. Members, our next submission is not due until 11:15, so I propose to suspend the meeting to give members an opportunity. No, we've been sitting since 8. We're ready for a short break for the sake of members, so we'll reconvene at 11:15. Thank you.